Outstanding. Girl, you knock me up. Exciting. You make me wanna shout.
Girl, you lookin' sweet tonight.
Yes, the M1 Abrams tank. It is something you've got, baby. My name is Musashi, and today I'm going to be looking at the driver's position on the M1 tank. It's not the sort of thing you see a lot of. It's not the sexiest position, maybe, but it's a really interesting one. And I was the driver in M1A1 heavy tank in the Gulf War. This video is going to be unapologetically long. I've decided to make a video to show people everything I know about the driver's position and the driver's responsibilities on the M1 tank. I believe this is unique on the internet. There's hardly anything out there that's comprehensive about the driver's position. It used to be that every tanker in the Army was trained at Fort Knox. I was too. And these gentlemen on the screen you see here aren't actually Army. They're Marines, I believe. This is a video of infantry guys that were out at a field exercise, and they were allowed to sit in the tank and sort of check it out. And there's an instructor here sort of giving them the ABCs of being the driver in a tank. And you'll see here he's about to pull out that center console. That's how you turn left and right on the tank, what he's holding on to, that sort of motorcycle thing. See, it pulls out. There's a lever that allows that thing to pull out towards you. So when you recline, when you're buttoned up in the tank, you can, it's not such of a long reach for your arms. So this video, again, will cover everything I can think of, but this is what you get typically when you first start your learning in the service on the M1 tank. Somebody, you sit in the hole, and someone starts going over general familiarity with this is this, and this is this, and this is that does. And what he's going to tell one of the guys here in the tank is about how to close up the hatch, how to button up. So they see this guy who's got his fingers there, and he tells him, get your fingers off of there. That's a complete noob mistake right there. You could definitely lose your fingers if you tried to pull something like that off. So, but now he doesn't know how to close it. There's another latch to close it. So what he does here, look, he moves the windshield wipers. So in the video, they were all laughing at the poor guy. So now he's showing him how to actually close the hatch. And there's a button there you push in, and you pull down on that lever after you've wheeled it shut. So now he's showing him how to do that. This is driver station 101 that this guy's getting. And this is what you go through when you first become a driver, is you just learn what the buttons do when you first go in there. And there is actually a lot to do from a maintenance standpoint, as well as just operating the M1 safely and effectively. Let's take a look at these systems more in depth so I can take some still pictures and show you what all the component parts do. Okay, so this is inside the driver's hole, and I want to show you how to actually close the hatch properly. You can tell this picture was taken from inside the turret. The driver's head is literally inches, like 6 or 8 inches from the turret basket that holds the turret in place. So there's no way you could take this picture without being in the turret, just to give your perspective on this. But again, let's look at how to close the hatch. It's one of the first things you have to learn in a tank. I've got a picture pulled up so you can see how to properly close the hatch. You turn where his hand is, you turn it counterclockwise to shut it. It takes some muscle to actually shut it because the weight of the hatch itself is working against you when you're shutting it. And then you close it, you wheel it all the way shut, and then you reach up with your thumb, right there where I'm pointing with the red circle there. You push in with that with your thumb, and then you pull down on that lever. That's the second step that the guy in the video didn't get right in the beginning. And then it latches on that little area there. And then to open it, you reverse the process. But instead of doing it counterclockwise, you actually have to do it clockwise, and it takes some muscle to make sure that the thing doesn't fly open too fast. Above there, you can see that is the headrest for the driver. That has been lifted up. It's on a little spring there so they can go up and down. That's been removed just so he could take that picture there. You also have to remove that or put that thing up in the up position to crawl out of the driver's hole into the turret, which I will cover in more detail. Here we've got another shot of the reclining position for the driver. The M1 tank gets a lot of sort of press about the fact that the driver reclines. You don't sit up in a normal position like you do in most tanks. And it is true, you do recline here. Your legs actually sit, or your butt is sitting there on the bottom and your legs overhang right here. That's where your butt goes, and your legs hang there. Your main back is supported through that section right there, and that is for your upper torso. That is in the full recline position, but it actually can move. There's a little latch. I forget if it's on the left or right, but there's a little latch mechanism that will make that upper part move up. Because most of the time you're driving the tank not with the hatch closed in the unbuttoned position, and that allows you to be supported. But when you're buttoned up, you will have that put down, and then you'll be able to recline and use your headrest, because you don't need that headrest unless you're in the recline position. Normally you just sort of sit up. So that one is the one I showed you before that goes up and down. But I also really want to show you something real important here. See that white thing behind the headrest? That is the turret. That's it. The turret's right behind your head. See that? Yeah, that thing is right on top of you, and that thing spins left and right real fast. And I'm going to show you a lot of information about that. That is the scariest thing about the tank for the driver. Again, we'll cover that. That's the halon system. There's a good fire suppression system in the M1. That's one in the driver's compartment. You see it says halon there. Also, you got a night light here. There's lots of night lights in the tank or throughout the turret and there as well. There's also, when you have blackout, when you don't want the enemy to see where you are, you have to be careful with that. And here's the main panel. That's how you start the tank, and a number of other things that go on there on the right-hand side. But one of the most important things in the whole tank to the driver is that thing right there. That is a little handle. It doesn't do anything but let you get in and out of the tank, because without that handle, it'd be real tough to get in and out. You use that handle more than you use anything in the driver's position. Okay, here's a view of what you see a lot of when you're driving the M1 tank. It's your main steering column there. I don't know who this guy is with jeans and penny loafers. Obviously not a tanker. Probably some media guy or something. But this is really interesting to look at, because it's a good shot of what the driver, the actual driving part of the M1 is. So you've got the black handles on the left-hand side there that you twist, you pull on it like a motorcycle. So you turn it left and right by just pulling it toward. If you want to go left, you pull the left one towards you. If you want to go right, you pull the right side towards you. The left handle, the black handle, doesn't do anything. The right black handle is your accelerator. So you don't use your feet like in a car to accelerate. You do just like a motorcycle, where you twist that right black handle to go forward. Actually, it's not just forward. It actually just gives it power. It puts the turbine to work. And forward is determined by the selector switch that you see just below that yellow sticker in the center on the white. That selector switch has a couple of settings. There's neutral, drive, and low. And the yellow sticker is saying, beware, this tank can move even when it's in neutral. In fact, that's called neutral steer. And if you want to pivot in place, you don't put it in drive, you keep it in neutral, and you just give it some gas with the handle and turn it left and right. And that's what this is here. This is the main advantage a tracked vehicle has over a wheeled vehicle, is the ability to do this. And I gotta admit, neutral steer is just fun. I don't know why, it just is. This is a similar picture that we had from before, from inside the turret looking into the driver's hole. I mostly want you to take a look at the left-hand side there. It looks like a TV screen kind of down about where the driver's butt would sit, just to the left of the steering column. This is no doubt an M1A2. I was in an M1A1. I've never seen anything like that, and so I can't comment on it. But if you see different things in the tank, it'll be because I am familiar with the M1A1, and that's primarily what I'm going to be talking about. The differences in an M1A1 and an M1A2 for the drivers pretty minimal. They have a little bit of electronics, but it's 98% the same exact experience, as far as I know. So you're at Fort Knox, you're taking your M1A1 driver training, and the first thing you do is you get in this thing. This isn't actually a tank. You can kind of tell from a number of reasons here, but also his patch on his shoulder says USA Armor School, and that's the left-hand side unit patch you get when you're there training in basic. But also, you can see that the vision ports are just weird looking. So this is the driver's training station that they have when you first learn the basic controls. It plays just like a video game. You can actually see stuff outside that driver's port. He's got a headset on there because you can take commands from the instructor or the alleged tank commander who's telling you what to do while you're playing your video game in there. The driving part of it's not all that rigorous. It's just to sort of get you used to the basic controls. So that when you hit the gas, you're not doing it live for the first time. You're doing it on a simulator like this thing. Again, I have no idea who this guy is. I just pull this off the internet, but this is basically what the driver station looks like. Yeah, it just looks like a video game at your arcade, local arcade. Will actually be a pretty nice video game at your local arcade. Thing probably costs $10 bazillion or something. But that's what your trainer looks like there. Back to our driver controls. I want to be able to show you that there's more than just going forward. There's also stopping. Your feet do the braking. You're right there in the very center of that steering console underneath the gear selector. That pedal there, that metal pedal, that is your brake. And then the small metal bit to the right, to his right of his foot, that is the emergency brake. And then there's a handle here. I'll show you a little more of a close-up. There's a close-up of the emergency handle. It's on, again, the right-hand side there. And you can see that mechanism on the bottom of the floor. It's a little hard to see. The picture's kind of small here, but there's the handle. So to actuate the emergency brake, you push down on the pedal. You push forward where that bar is in there. There's the metal plate we saw earlier. You push down on that, and then you pull back on that lever. And all those wires, or that whole mechanism in the bottom, that is so that you can park your 60-ton tank on an incline up or down and have it not move. The parking brake is very effective. But this isn't like your car where you really ought to use it. This one, you really must use it when you're on a serious incline with your tank. You use it just as sort of a safety precaution too anytime you're on an incline. So because if you're in drive and your foot is on the brake, you will not move unless you twist the throttle. But even if you don't twist the throttle, once you move the selector switch from neutral to drive, even with your foot on the brake, and you have not applying any throttle, if you let your foot off the brake when it's in drive, the tank will begin to roll forward. It's natural turbine torque, or I don't know what does that, but just no throttle input with the tank in drive, and the tank will move forward. So what happens is you have to have your foot on the brake, so that the normal brake, the regular brake, so that the tank does not move when you switch it from neutral into drive. You always have your foot on the brake. And then when you start to move out and apply throttle, then of course you let your foot off the brake. But if you've stopped and you're not intending to go anywhere, you're not applying throttle, you have to use the emergency brake as a safety precaution, because if you forget and you take your foot off the tank, say there's someone standing right outside of your tank, or there's other personnel that are just on the outside, not only will the tank move in neutral, like we saw that'll do the neutral steer, but even in drive with your foot on the brake, applying no thing, if you let your foot off the brake, tank starts to move. This is something, as the driver, you have to get used to, like, right away. There's no margin for error. So the parking brake gets applied every time you pretty much come to a stop, unless you're in the field, or, anytime you're driving the vehicle, typically, and you've come to a stop, 80 or 90% of the time, you're going to apply that parking brake. So you wind up mashing that parking brake and letting off with that lever a lot of times. I mean, you have hundreds and hundreds of times in your career, maybe thousands of times, you'll be depressing and releasing that parking brake. It's that sort of mundane but very important driving skill that you never hear anybody talk about. Maybe there isn't any reason to talk about it, but that's what we're doing on this video. We're looking at all the nuance and hidden little skills the driver has to bring to bear when it's operating that 60-ton beast. The driver in the M1A1 has two primary control panels. There's one on the left and there's one on the right. This is the one on the left. On that left side section of your left panel are all the warning indicator lights. A couple of them there that I'm making tick marks are the not as critical things, like your air filter needs to get blown out or other things. At the bottom there, things get more and more dire. And by the time you get lights at the bottom, you're in real trouble. Also here at the top, you've got the warning lights for your engine, things that are wrong with your engine, and then just to the right of that is for your transmission. So your two primary components have their own separate lights for when something's amiss. That red thing that looks like you're going to launch a nuclear missile, that, if I remember right, that was to manually make the fire extinguisher system go off. I don't exactly remember that. Here you've got temperature and also RPMs, was my recollection of what those did. Again, it's been a while. This is your fuel selector. So there's a fuel selector switch on the left-hand side, and you've got rear and front fuel tanks. And when you switch that selector, the dial just to the right would show you, it's just like in your car, how full it was. And then the one in the front shows you when you're really critical critically low. We use this a lot, even in the Gulf War, because we were traveling a lot and we were almost outrunning our fuel. So, I never had to pay much attention to those fuel gauges because we never drove that far in the M1 until we got into the Gulf War, and we're, driving all the time. We drove for days on end, and fuel keeping up with us was a really big issue. So in the Gulf War, I, for the first time, really had to pay attention to those fuel gauges. I apologize, I don't have higher resolution photos of this so you can see better what I'm talking about, but this is all I could get. Here you've got, again, the night, or just a light that you use at nighttime. There's a little selector switch there that you turn left or right, a little knob that dims that. And when you're out off the grid, it's amazing how bright all this stuff is. And you can see it a long way off, half a mile or mile away, you can see these lights. There's your radio. That's the radio comm system, very important. There's a variety of selector switches. You plug your helmet with your comm system into that. That's how you talk to your tank commander. Here's our all-important device on the tank for the driver, the handle. I covered that already, but never forget the handle. Use that all the time. And here's your main control panel. You use this a lot because the other one's more about gauges and monitoring. This is actually things that operate things. Here's your lights. There are several running conditions that you can have. You've got regular lights. There's blackout lights on the back of your tank. I'll cover that a little bit later in the video too. Then also you've got right here there's a master electrical turn-on switch. The tank commander, if I remember this correctly, the tank commander has a master electrical switch, and you also do at your panel here as well. Here at the top left is another button that's extremely important to me especially, but most tankers, the heater button. There is an outstanding heater in your tank, will warm you right up. And you got to push that heater button. That's when you're in a cold environment like when I was in Germany, that becomes real important. Even in the desert, it would get cold. Yeah, love my heater. There we have another gauge where we're showing how to start the tank. So there's another, so you have the master switch, and then there's a switch to actually start the tank. It's right there. You push in on that button, you push in and hold it. Then the orange light comes on, and then when the tank is going, it goes woo, it's got this very turbine sound to it. Then the green light will turn on, and then you are up and running at that stage. And this is exactly what it sounds like. One thing I didn't mention is you have to push and hold that button while it's cycling through. It's really just a matter of experience. You kind of learn by the sound of the turbine when you can let go of the button. That, my friends, is your smoke generator. It's not the smoke grenades. That's something that's in the turret that actually shoots off grenades. This is as I've said in other past videos I've had, this thing is what makes smoke coming off your exhaust manifold. That's why I call it the fun button. And let me show you what the fun button can do. So this is the smoke generator outside the back of the tank. You can see it makes a lot of smoke. You just push up on that button. You have to hold the button down to make the smoke. As long as you hold it, smoke keep coming out. I always want to do this, smoke some car behind me. Just like that. Isn't that cool? Smoke that guy behind him. Never got to do that though. Never had the chance. Going back through our buttons here, everything on this main panel does something important. There's a high beam here. You flip it up and the green light turns on. It's just like a car's high beam. When I was in the M60A3, there was a huge, you see it on the tank in a lot of tank games that are displaying it, a huge searchlight on your tank, and I've used that thing, and it was amazing. That is your panel dim switch. That's a very important tactical button on the tank. Doesn't seem like it, but the driver's station is lit up like a Christmas tree. You can see it for a long way off, so you have to be able to dim it. And then the blue light there just gives you the ability to see within your compartment without being as lit up. So when you want to just see what's going on when it's really dark, you can use that blue light. But being able to look at let's take a look at how bright the driver's station is. This will go by real quick, so look here quickly. There's the front panel lights. They're doing an actual test here of testing all the lights, so you wouldn't normally run with all these lights on, but you can see how bright it is. Imagine if it was dark outside and you're off the electrical grid. It's not a very good video that shows this, but most people aren't taking videos of this. But you'll see here in a second on the left-hand side especially all of the warning lights. See just to the left him there? It's bright, right? It looks just like a Christmas tree. So there's your main panel again. Here's another video that shows your sort of normal running lights. You got your main light. So you don't really run with all of them on like that first video. Here's another very important part of your tank. There's a nuclear, biological, and chemical survivability kit in the M1A1 Abrams, the M1 series. That is the control panel that the driver can move that knob and turn the airflow on more or less. There's also an on-off switch. A lot of people always talk about that the M1 tank is air-conditioned. It's not. You're wearing a gas mask and you're putting that thing on to prevent you from breathing in anything else that might be bad for you. And there's another control panel there. I don't remember exactly what that control panel buttons did. Didn't use this a whole lot. I don't even remember getting that much training on it. I certainly knew how to use it at the time. It's probably just my memory has faded about the exact function of some of those buttons. I did hook my gas mask wearing